AI be a witness at a trial? And what I want to ask you, and I want you to think hard about this, could a non-AI, could a dead person, could a ghost be a witness at a trial? He did not know which dead wife this ring came from, but it wasn't from Zona. Right? Defense history has ever happened. The ones who brought up the ghost and tried to put the ghost on trial was the defense team.
Welcome to a deceptive reality.
Tonight, we're going to talk about a ghost that helped solve their own murder and actually appears in court records in the trial.
It's so crazy. I covered this like 2 years ago, so I'm not super fresh on it. So you're going to have to freshen me up a little bit on it. But this is such a crazy story. I love this story.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty cool. And I mean, you might be familiar with it, but all our friends in the audience probably aren't.
Right.
But tonight's episode starts with a dead woman, her mother who never gave up on her, 3 doctors, one of which dropped the ball big time, a court case, and probably the most harebrained bad defense decision on the history of the planet. And a guy who basically just tried to hide his crime in really absurd ways. But the funny thing is there was 2 versions of this.
Mm-hmm.
The newspapers and a lot of that said, oh, this is a lot of stuff that people noticed. And, you know, it was really people who cracked the case. But the real story, the real true story, the court records and everything have a ghost that kicked the whole thing into action. So we're going to tell both versions. Yeah, we're going to tell both.
Stuff. I like this kind of story stuff. When there's 2 different versions, you kind of get both sides of it. I like that.
Yeah, I know. It's cool. We're going to have something for the skeptics and we're going to have something for the true believers in here. And then we'll make our decision at the end. I know we lean into the tinfoil hat, but we'll see.
No way. Not on every single one. No way.
You know, I kind of wonder over the course of this, I started out very skeptical and you're much more of a believer, but I almost feel like we've either gone opposite or we sort of met in the middle a little bit.
It's difficult because there's a lot of things that I thought was true that now I'm kind of like, I don't know about that. But then again, I think there's a lot of stuff where you're like, man, that's hokey. There ain't nothing that's even remotely true about that. Like that's false. That's fake. And now after a few cases, you're like, yeah, there's something to it. I don't know what it is. So you're probably right. We probably met somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's a good thing to be. And just to remind everyone, we do cases where we believe them or not. We're just storytellers.
That's all we are.
And
just telling stories.
Tonight's story, I want to tell you about a young woman whose name was Elva Zona Heaster Shue.
Wow.
And I'm not going to say that every time in the episode. Everyone, including the newspapers, just called her Zona. And her case, her murder, became known as the Greenbrier Ghost. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. I want to take you back to a little bit before that. Zona lived in Greenbrier County, hence the Greenbrier Ghost, in West Virginia. So one of my favorite places to talk about that I've never seen, it's hidden away in the Appalachian Mountains with Lewisburg at its seat. And our story takes place in 1897. Now, an interesting fact I learned researching this case is even in these small towns way back then, they used to have newspapers. And they couldn't get news from abroad. So you might be in a small town of 50 or 100 people. And if you had an argument with your husband, that might end up in the newspaper and they'd name names.
Oh, wow.
So they really didn't have a sense of privacy in those places.
No privacy, Nick. Think about it, though. Back then, There was phone books that had your full name, had full phone number. I think they even had addresses. Did they have addresses back then? Phone books?
At one time they did. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I remember
privacy,
that.
not a thing.
Yeah. Right. Not at all. And news traveled through the churches. I mean, you'd get your townly news from the people sitting next to you in the pews. You'd get it from neighbors across the fence. Like that was the old water cooler of the time. You'd get it just going in the courthouse to pay fines and stuff. They just tell you things about the cases they got going on. And like I said, the local papers would put your name, full name, and where you lived right in it.
So crazy.
So that being said, there's not a ton of information about Zona in her life, but her new husband, since we were in a patriarchal society a lot more than we are now, there was a lot of information about him. Now, he called himself Edward or Trout.
Great name.
I don't have an answer for why he called himself Trout. Maybe he was a prolific fisherman. But basically, he was a highly respected, essential, and highly paid worker in the town because he was the blacksmith. And he had been married a number of times before. And there was always rumors and news that he might have been hard to live with. He was a violent man sometimes towards the women he married.
Yep.
So, but still, he met Zona and they thought that they had fallen in love and they got married. Now, people, because of the news they had about him and stuff, they were kind of skeptical, but no one was more skeptical than Mary Jane. Mary Jane was Zona's mother, and right from the get-go, she did not like Edward Shue.
They say moms know.
They say moms know. I'm sure there's a lot of married men out there and married women too, probably, that say that their in-laws aren't their favorite and they don't like them that much. I mean, that was a running joke on the Flintstones back in the day.
Right.
The mother-in-law, right?
Yep.
But they were married relatively short time. I think it was only like 2 or 3 months before the main event of our story takes place. So their honeymoon period was pretty short. Do you think, like, you said you think mother-in-laws have like a special intuition for this kind of thing. Do you think that mothers and daughters have special connections on top of that?
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Is it just mothers and daughters, or is it like mothers and sons, or?
I think that there's always going to be a connection with one child and one parent. Now, sometimes you'll have people that's like, a mommy's girl or a mommy's boy, right. And sometimes you'll have, a lot of times it'll be, what they call a dad that the girl just has a super strong connection with, or a son. So I think that it's always one of the parents typically. And that bond is almost at a weird place. Now, there's a lot of stories where they talk about when something's going on with the daughter, sometimes the mom can pick up on that before anything else.
Yeah, and that's sort of a case of what we're going to have going on here now, because she did not like Trout or Edward. Which do you like better? Should we stick with Edward or Trout?
Trout, because he's a butthole.
All right. Trout, you're butthole. So
don't you come in on my radio, Trout. You stay away from my radio.
Right. Yeah, we don't need your legs. But he was a good man, and you better believe that Mary Jane knew very well about the rumors of his past brief marriages. So she wasn't for this at all. However, she did respect her daughter and let her make the choice that she wanted to make. And Trout and Zona were soon wed. And like I said, it was only 2 months before our events started taking place. So imagine there's getting later in the year, bright and early in the morning. Trout left his home and went to the home of a nearby woman and asked her son to do an errand. Now, they were neighbors, so they knew each other, but Trout wasn't well known to be friendly and visiting the neighbors, so they kind of thought it was odd right from the get-go. And the little boy, his name was Anderson Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And what he asked is, he said, could you go over to the house in a few minutes and look for eggs? And if you don't find any eggs, go to the front door and ask Zona if she needs you to pick up anything in town. Mm-hmm. If she doesn't answer, go right in. So they thought it was odd, but I mean, being neighborly people, the boy's mother said, yeah, sure, Anderson, you can go and do that. You know, collect all the eggs you can. Be careful with them. Bring them in. And a few minutes went by and he took off down the road to do just what he was told. You know, he wasn't offered any pay or anything, but he was a good boy. Mm-hmm. So he gets down to the shoe house and he looks around and tons of chickens, but no eggs. That's really weird.
Yeah, that is odd.
So he's like, that's a problem. Well, I guess I'll just go ask Miss Shue if she needs anything into town. So he goes up to the front door and he's ready to tell her, sorry, I didn't find any eggs. I haven't got anything for you this morning. Do you need anything from town? So he knocks on the door. Nothing. Complete silence. So he knocks again. You know, he's still trying to be polite, but he's got to talk to her. That's what he was specifically asked. So no answer again. He pushes open the door, and right in the middle of the floor, collapsed, he finds Zona. She was in sort of an odd position. Her body was stretched straight, her feet together, her hand at one side and the other across her body. And her head was tilted a little bit to one side. So Anderson, he'd never seen anything. Like, he's a young kid. He's never seen anything of the likes before.
Yeah.
He hightails it out of there. He's going directly home to tell his parents what had happened. He told his mother. They went right away to the blacksmith shop, and told Trout that Zona was dead. So Shue, or that's Trout, we're going to call him Trout. Trout, the boy's mother, they went back. Of course, Anderson didn't go again, but they all arrived back at the house at the same time. So far, have you noticed anything unusual? Like, what have you noticed that's strange about this situation already?
I mean, old Trout has people doing some dirty work is the first thing, first and foremost, out of nowhere, just randomly. Right.
Yeah, never talked to his neighbors hardly at all before.
No, but now he's got an agenda.
Right, so he came right from his house.
Yep.
To ask the boy to go back to his house to pick up the eggs, which he clearly has. I mean, if you know anything about chickens, he's clearly already picked up the eggs.
Right, exactly.
So why do you think he did this?
He needed an alibi, Nick. That little boy was in there. I think he killed my wife.
Right. Or to say, at least I wasn't there and I wasn't the one who discovered the body, right?
But
now,
he did it horribly.
Like, I mean, he did do it. This is the whole point. I want you to remember that.
Yeah.
He did it horribly. And you have to believe that maybe the kid's a little shocked, but his mother's got to be thinking, this is an unusual situation.
Oh, yeah.
This is not right. Something just isn't right here. So we aren't the only ones to notice this. Even back in the good old days, the errand became a link in the chain that was going to be wrapped around Trout.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to look like this. It doesn't, just this little bit here doesn't prove that he did anything. It wouldn't give a jury necessarily the proof they needed to convict someone. But it's just a snowball of problems.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the next thing that happens, of course, when you have something like this, they're going to call a doctor.
Oh, for sure.
Like
Yeah.
it's too late, but maybe he can investigate. So they had a doctor come by called George W. Knapp, and he arrived. It wasn't too much later. But basically someone had moved Zona from the floor, laid her out, and dressed her. Apparently Trout had taken total control of her body, done all these different things as soon as they found her. He dressed her in a dress with a high, stiff collar and a scarf. And when questioned, he said, this is what she would have wanted. This is her very favorite clothing.
Yeah, sure it was.
Now, back in those days, someone eventually would have taken care of the body and all this stuff, but it was never men that did this. It was always women that would take care of the bodies and that kind of thing. So that was a little unusual there. But the doctor came in. He looked at her. He thought it was kind of odd that she had a high, stiff collar. Whose favorite clothing is that? That sounds like, not to be offensive, but that sounds like church wear. Like
yeah.
You wear uncomfortable, fancy stuff to church, maybe.
Right.
But the doctor came in and he saw things immediately. He's like, there's a slight discoloration on the right side of her neck and right cheek. He loosened the collar and examined the front of her neck. And then he went around to start examining the back of her neck. And at this point, all of a sudden, Trout was head over heels with himself in grief. And he suddenly shot towards the floor and cupped his wife and wouldn't let the doctor get anywhere near her neck or the back of her head.
Oh yeah, that's how you should love.
Beside himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's just like, oh, you can't, just don't disturb her anymore. Like this kind of thing, you have to stop. And do you know what the doctor did?
If I was a doctor, I'd hit him with something and say, "Get out the way, boy."
Right. So the doctor was like, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry, my bad."
Mm-hmm.
This would be the equivalent of you having a crime scene in your house and the guy comes in to spray luminol and you're like, oh, no, please don't do that. My wife would just be upset with the mess if she was alive. Don't spray that stuff.
Right.
And them just saying, oh, I'm sorry, my bad. We'll not spray any luminol around here. So kind of absurd if you think about it. But George W. Knapp also knew the blacksmith.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you know what? I'll respect your wishes. I won't examine her any further. So later witnesses said when they were bringing the body out, Zona's head moved loosely from side to side, even hours after. Even hours after she had been dead. And of course, as you know, there's things like rigor mortis and that kind of thing that's set in.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you feel about the investigation that took place there?
I mean, top notch. By all accounts, this is pretty top notch stuff. I mean,
very thorough, right?
They're like, sir, don't worry. Listen, I'm just going to go ahead and just do my thing. You do your thing. You want to move the body, maybe tighten that neck up. I'm sure she would love to have that neck tightened up just a little bit.
Right.
Otherwise, flopping all over the place. She wouldn't like that. That's not what she would like.
Right. Now, there was some versions of this that, and I'm sure it did come up in court, that George W. Knapp didn't do a very good job and maybe even tried to cover up his misgivings, because he described initially the cause of death as the everlasting faint.
Oh, I mean,
so someone fainted and they just never woke up.
That happened with Elvis Presley back in the day. Them girls was fainting. Yep. They never came back, Nick.
That's right. That's right. Maybe she caught a glimpse.
That's what it was.
But he then changed it briefly. And this was not on any records, so we're not sure this was real. But He changed it briefly to childbirth. Which
Was she
would be
pregnant?
false. She was not pregnant.
Well, that's
so that's very suspicious.
That's some Jesus action going on right there.
Right, it really is. But these didn't show up in like state preserved 1897 reports that we've been using. So these were sort of stuff that were added on later.
Mm-hmm.
So, take that with a grain of salt, but it's bizarre diagnoses carrying the scene so far. But basically, back in those days, men had total dominion over their wife, living or dead. So Zona's family took her to Little Sewell Mountain and buried her. And, normally that would be the end of the case. And good old Trout could move on to his very next wife. And that would have been that. But that's not what happened. Mary Jane, if you remember, Zona's loyal mother, wasn't going to let that happen. So now we get into the ghost part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this is what I live for here. But after the funeral, so they had agreed to take her up and be buried. And pretty much everyone thought it was the end of it. But Mary Jane just wanted a miracle. She didn't have any evidence of anything, but she still, like right from the get-go, before anything happened, she distrusted Trout. So basically, she went home and they had a little wake for Zona. And then something happened that really ticked her off, really set her off. She wanted Zona's ring from the marriage as a memento. And at the little gathering they had, Trout gave her a ring and he told her, clasped her hands and said, Zona really wanted her to have it. So Mary Jane took the ring, looked at it for a moment, and said in anger and stormed out that she did not know which dead wife this ring came from, but it wasn't from Zona. Right?
Mom coming in clutch.
Oh, yeah. She was mad. Like this, I think this goes to show how completely uncaring of people Trout is.
Oh, yeah.
Like, even if you are a horrible person, like, you can't even remember which of your deceased wives had which ring.
Right.
Like, that's awful. Like, imagine being the mother in that situation.
That'd be horrible.
But that very night, she went home and she prayed. She was a religious woman. She prayed and prayed that the Lord would bring her daughter back to her.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it was the praying or if it was going to happen anyway, before she went to bed, still perfectly awake, Mary Jane appeared to her in the room.
You mean Zona?
Zona appeared to Mary Jane in the room.
Yep.
Now, if you were thinking to make up a ghost story, you'd say, oh, she was transparent and floating and stuff. But Mary Jane said Zona looked flesh and blood. In fact, at one point, she reached out to touch her to see if she was real.
Yeah.
But Zona didn't allow her to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But Mary Jane described herself as completely awake. The room had light in it. No lamp was in it, but had light in it, and it was coming off of Zona. She was visited 4 times. And again, I say, there's certain things you can expect if a ghost appears and was murdered and wants help. They might tell you right away what went down.
Mm-hmm.
On the first night, Zona's ghost recounted what they were arguing about that morning. So that very morning, Trout had come in to have his breakfast, and he lost his mind because she hadn't prepared him any meat for breakfast.
Uh-oh.
And Zona's ghost was really offended that he would Like he would criticize what she had made for him that morning. So to her mother, she complained about that instead of getting right to what had happened. So Zona's ghost was angry because she said, I had butter, I had apple butter, fruit, jellies, toast, pears, cherries, raspberry jelly, all these things made for him. That takes time.
Oh, yeah.
And he was ticked off because I didn't have a certain kind of meat that he wanted. And that kind of becomes important because if you recall, Mary Jane wasn't in the house that day.
Yeah.
She hadn't seen what had been upon the table. And all these things that Zona had complained about making and it wasn't enough for Trout were on the table.
Maybe if she would have made them eggs that he picked up before he killed her,
right?
He would have been, she'd have been fine.
He might have been fine. I think he wanted bacon, whatever it was. He lost his mind. Like, I'm telling you, Bert, if I sit down to a spread like that, I'm going to be happy.
Heck yeah.
Right?
Carb day.
Like, yeah, really. Like, that's enough sugar to get you through your whole blacksmithing day.
Oh, yeah.
But he wanted meat and he lost his mind. So that was the first day. And she went and investigated and found out that those things were on the table. So she's like, oh, I didn't imagine that this was a real thing. Now, the next 2 nights, this kind of hurts the case because Zona told her to check out by the fence that they would find blood there. And neither Mary Jane nor the police later found any blood at the fence. And there was another thing about the cellar on the 3rd night, which neither of them found anything about that. But on the 4th night, this is where the real information came, and this is what's going to kick off the whole thing. She talked about him flying into a rage for not having meat for breakfast, and he wrapped his hands around her throat and strangled her with the strength that only a blacksmith would have. And then she said between the 1st and the 2nd cervical bones, he had twisted her neck and broke it. And this is when the jump scare came in because she said at that moment, Zona spun her head around backwards to demonstrate and then disappeared.
Oh, wow.
That must have been horrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Especially for a mother who had just lost her daughter. So what do you think of all that?
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if you think about it, even though she may have messed up on thing 2 and 3, like the 4th thing is almost impossible to know, especially back then. It was a different day and age. It's not like they went into things exactly the same, but the fact that, like, if I was making up a story about that, I wouldn't have made up a story of, well, I made all this and all that. And, you know, that wouldn't have been right. You know, I would have
which
found
also turned out to be true.
Right. And that, I think that's the important part because, you know, if I was doing, I'd be like, he accused me of blah, blah, blah. And that's why this happened, you know. Because if you're the outsider, you don't know what the reasoning would be. So you're going to go to the worst, most darkest things. It wouldn't be something like breakfast meat. You know what I'm saying?
Really? It almost seems so mundane and something that someone would complain to their mother about.
Right.
Like it's almost like they were having a real life, you know, complaint session with each other. Just like they would have if something hadn't happened to her. Exactly. But anyway, Mary Jane was convinced. She went to the Greenbrier County state attorney, who was the name of by the name of John A. Preston. And she told the tale with the ghost story and everything. And she uses that to convince him and another lawyer to exhume the body. And this is not a common thing back then, especially without the husband's say so. Yep. So they went and they got Dr. Knapp from earlier, if you remember that incompetent buffoon. Yep. They said, you've got to attend, but we're going to have 2 doctors with you this time, 2 additional doctors with you. They went and got Trout and brought him in so he can have another look. And all of this off the pressure of Mary Jane saying that a ghost told her this very specific information.
So crazy.
So very quickly, the authorities ordered an inquest and the body was exhumed. On February 22nd, 1897, they lifted Zona's coffin from the cemetery in Little Sewell Mountain. And all were in attendance. We had two other doctors, Dr. Rupert and Dr. Houston McClung. And this time, they didn't stop at the collar. So what is it do you think that they might find this time?
If I was a betting man, I bet it was probably some type of neck issue. Was she looking at the front of her coffin or the back of her coffin when they exhumed her?
She was looking straight up.
Wow.
She was looking straight up.
Well, she wasn't that way in ghost form, so that's pretty impressive.
No, well, exactly. But the only reason she was looking straight up is because the stiff collar and the scarf that he had jammed around her neck held her head upwards.
Shocker.
Now, other people had noticed that things were wrong because they had to prepare her body for the grave there. And like I said before, that's typically women. And when they were posing her in the casket, they noticed that even though she was very stiff, her head would roll back and forth slightly the whole time. And it wasn't their first time of doing this. They knew that that was abnormal. So I think it's safe to say there was a little suspicion before the ghost got involved.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Big time.
But the ghost really pushed it over the edge. So they said, okay, Trout, you're going to prison. We're going to charge you with murdering your wife, and you're going to have your day in court. So what they found was exactly what Mary Jane had said. And it was actually between the first and the second cervical vertebrae. So that was very precise and something that no one would have expected Mary Jane to even know those words or, be able to predict that, having never seen her in their initial state.
Well, X-rays wasn't even around back then either. So you wouldn't even know the names of those things.
Yeah, you just have to know by feeling, and only a doctor would probably know how to do that.
And that wouldn't even be precise.
Right. So even though George Knapp had completely flubbed this before, with the two other doctors standing on either side of him, he changed the case from unexplained death to homicide.
So crazy.
Yep. Now, the craziest part is they did go to court on this. And the prosecution said, look, we've really got all the evidence we need. We got this clumsy setup that little boy Anderson was sent to find the body by Trout himself. Trout was the only one at the house. Trout had only left moments before. There's been rumors, and we won't get into it, of him doing this to previous wives. And even about town, before we even arrested him, when he found out about the exhumation, he was telling people that there's no way to prove that he murdered her. So
crazy.
We've got all the evidence we want. What we absolutely don't want to do is we're not going to bring up the ghost. So the prosecution didn't say a word about the ghost. Now, this is where the biggest blunder in defense history has ever happened. The ones who brought up the ghost and tried to put the ghost on trial was the defense team.
Whoops.
So they got Mary Jane on the stand, and their only last ditch attempt must have been, let's make her sound crazy. And I don't know what the plan was for after that, because they've already exhumed the body. They saw what had happened and how it lined up with everything. But for whatever reason, this is the path they took. So they got up and cross-examined her, and they said, "Is it possible that you were asleep and dreamed this?" And she said, "No, I was awake as I ever am." And they said, "Are you a superstitious woman?" And she says, "No, not particularly." And then asked them the question back, "But don't you believe in scripture?"
Smart.
So sort of made them look foolish. Because she had prayed for this and their prayers had been answered. And they really grilled her and tried to get her to say, "Oh, it could have been a dream. It could be a hallucination of grief." And she would not budge. So needless to say, they put the ghost on trial and it didn't work. He was convicted and the jury recommended life in prison instead of the death penalty. Now, that didn't sit very well with the townsfolk.
Oh, they just wanted it.
They wanted a little bit more. So there was actually a part after this trial, which really isn't, I think it's a fun story, but it's not really relevant to the rest of it. But he was at the local jail waiting to be transferred to the penitentiary, and people showed up with nooses and rifles and all this stuff. And the sheriff of them came out and sort of reasoned with him. Meanwhile, the deputies ran out into the woods with Trout, and they just hid amongst the trees until they went in to look for him and couldn't find him. So he narrowly escaped a death sentence there. But
they wanted that keister.
And they wanted him bad. So once they got to the penitentiary, they still had to bargain with him just to try and get that ring back, the real ring back. And he did not want to give it over, but eventually he did. And Mary Jane didn't see the ghost after that, from what she ever said. But she went to the grave saying that that ghost visited her those 4 nights. And that's what basically solved her daughter's murder.
Well, that's the thing. You know, they always say that there's a energy that stays connected. And even I've started leaning that direction a little bit. It's like, if you have some type of a connection with somebody, which is exactly what we're talking about here, it's almost like that energy it's always there. It's some form of connection.
Right.
And the way that I'm leaning now, even when it comes to like our trip to the Wildwood or anywhere else that we've been, is that if you push energy into that energy, maybe that energy can manifest itself. And I think that might be what some of these cases are, is a case where there's something that pushed something just enough to manifest them into real life.
Yeah. And you know, I'm not a religious fellow, but she wanted that more than anything. Like she was praying, you better believe with all her heart.
Oh, for sure.
To have some kind of sign, and she got it. So maybe that's the little push, like you said, that made that manifest.
I mean, if you are religious, I mean, if you're going to get something to happen, that's probably the way that, you know, I would go about it.
Yeah. I think anyone can almost imagine themselves in that situation, like just begging for more time with a family member or something like that. And, you know, sometimes those come true.
That's true.
But now we have to go back into skeptic land.
No, we don't.
I think we do, just to close this off.
Fine.
So I want to ask you a question. This was a while ago, but this wasn't witch hunting days. It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that someone coming into the Attorney General's office and saying, "A ghost told me all these things. Would you mind launching an expensive exhumation and court proceeding for me?" What's someone going to say about that?
That you're off your rocker.
Right. Now, if you remember earlier, Mary Jane didn't get any opposition at all.
Yeah.
Do you know why that is? I've sort of dropped hints throughout the story.
I don't know that I picked up on that.
Well, what it is that every person who interacted this story along the way noticed things that were unusual.
Oh, I see.
The mother noticed that Trout never come and talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
And noticed that it was odd for him to ask her son to go where he just came from.
Yeah.
Do a task that he'd already probably done. And then make sure that he goes into the cottage.
Yeah.
The people that were there when the original doctor came to examine the body noticed that Trout had sort of lined up the body on the floor and refused to let the doctor touch where the bruising was. Like, he was perfectly stable until he tried to get to the doctor tried to get to the back of her neck.
Yep.
People noticed that. People noticed that when they were dressing the body later, that the head rolled around, even though the rest of the body was in complete rigor.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere along the way, people had noticed that things were unusual, and the only thing that let this get to burial was the social norms that the husband was in control and got his wishes in these situations. So all it took was someone also from the family coming and asking to have this done. And with the story of the ghost, it gave enough reasonable doubt that people could be like, you know what? That's it. Let's do it.
I can see that.
So the skeptics think that Mary Jane knew this. And she knew, with the information she had gathered from all the people she had talked to, that if she said that a ghost told her this would be enough to give the extra push people needed to get this ball rolling.
Which is smart.
Right. So what the skeptics say is that all along the way, everyone noticed that something was wrong, but they didn't want to turn over the social apple cart. But once they all had the supernatural excuse to do it, everything fell like dominoes. So it really was people that solved this case. And it just took a very smart woman to kick it all off with the supernatural tale.
Which is smart.
That's right. And I mean, the guys could have still get convicted if she had just said in court, oh, maybe you're right, because they still would have had all the evidence. But she stuck to that. And people questioned her till the day that she died. And she never recanted that story. So now's the question, do you fall on the skeptic side of this? Or do you fall on the believer side of this?
Here's what I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that something happened, but if it didn't, I'm glad that she was able to fool them enough to get what really happened out. But the only reason why I think is more on the believer side is because she was able to guesstimate things that back then you wouldn't have had real proof of, which is how the neck was broken. Like that's a part of it that you're just not going to get right.
I feel like even today, I wouldn't know necessarily.
No.
You know?
There's no way.
Right. And some things for me that lead me a little more to the believer side is she didn't go straight for the obvious story.
Right.
She predicted things that were set out on the table. She never saw that. That was definitely cleaned up by the time she ever got around there.
Yep.
She said two things that weren't relevant to what she was trying to do at all on the second and third night that she didn't have to say.
Right.
And then everything she described as Zona's ghost was not what people of the time were thinking of a ghost. They weren't thinking a solid body visiting you. Like in those times, that was still when people probably were like a little bit cautious about vampires.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, so it's just, it was the Exorcist story, plus never recanting during the trial, even though she had already won, never recanting for the rest of her life. You know, that's hard to stick to.
That's very hard to stick to. That makes sense. Listen, I'm a believer. I'm with you on that one.
I'm kind of a believer on it, but man, oh man, the other story, even the skeptical story, would make a good book.
Oh yeah.
She's like the Sherlock Holmes or Agatha Christie of this story. Like, she came up with a brilliant plan from the very beginning to get this guy.
Oh, yeah. She concocted the ultimate plan.
Right. And that line in front of everyone with the ring, she couldn't have planned it better herself. What if it really was the ring?
Oh, yeah.
And she did that to cast more doubt on the guy. Because she said this in front of everyone. I don't know which dead wife you got this from, but it wasn't Zona.
It's so smooth.
Can you imagine? No, I've never read that anywhere. But once I started researching and telling the story, I was like, she could have orchestrated this from the moment her daughter died.
She could have.
Brilliant. I think she's brilliant and telling the truth. I don't know how I can mix the two.
I don't know. Maybe she's a combination of both. She's a little bit of sweet, a little bit of sour.
Maybe. But I just want to pose some questions to our audience. Do you think that a ghost can be a witness in trial? There's actually a plaque in this town where the courthouse used to stand. Do you think people do come back sometimes to help the living or help the living solve their crimes? Do you think if you want people back enough that you might make it happen? Interesting things to think about.
Definitely interesting. Like Nick said, tell us in the comments down below. We're dying to know. Wherever you're listening to our podcast, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. And also, don't be stingy. Tell all your friends about us. We love having new friends over here. We've been getting some new viewers across the way and new subscribers. We definitely appreciate each and every one of you. Until we see you in the next podcast, goodbye.
Ooh, goodbye.
Oh, she back. She back, boss.